Hello, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank the opportunity of being here presenting my work to all of you that are in so many different countries. This year, I will speak in English, so I ask you to forgive me for some mistakes or something wrong that I would say. My name is Rafaela, and I'm a Portuguese Sign Language interpreter. I work in higher education. It's like a university, and I started in 2008. And this year, for the first time, I started teaching sign writing. And that happens because I did an investigation on that area. It was my master thesis. It was about sign writing, and I did an adaptation of sign writing to the Portuguese Sign Language. So this presentation is based on a sign writing learning experience, which happened during almost 4 months. It was between February and the end of May, and it took place at the ESEC, which is education school here in Coimbra. And the subject was a part of the Portuguese Sign Language Degree. With this presentation, I intend to present two perspectives, the teacher perspective and also the student's perspective. So in this situation, and beginning with the teacher perspective, the teacher was a beginner, so it was the first time that I teach this kind of subject, that I teach sign writing. And like everybody feels, starting a new task and teaching some subject, it's always hard and demanding, but on the other hand, it's also challenging. Oh, sorry. So at the beginning, it was a little hard preparing classes without having the notion of the perception of how long the task will take. So what I felt at the beginning was I don't know how much time with which every task will take. So it was a little difficult to me prepare the classes without have that notion. But it was interesting to realize that while the semester was advancing, I become more confident in that preparation. And so because this subject wasn't easy, at the beginning I was always concerned with the balance between the theory and the practice. Because in order to become fluent on writing a language, the students and everybody need to write it over and over again. And first of all, the students need to have the theoretical basis and theoretical tools about the writing system. So for me, it was a little difficult to know how to balance these two aspects between theory and practice. And because the subject had few hours, it was a subject with 20 hours during a semester, so there are not much hours to do all of this. So, like I said, unfortunately, with a lot of themes to teach in only 20 hours, it wasn't easy to get much time to practice. So, once I have the obligation, of course, to follow the subject program, the strategy that I use and that I adopt was ask the students to do some homework, meaning autonomous work. And I try to ask for varied works, like so the students can improve their skills on the writing. For example, sometimes they had to write signs that I recorded. Sometimes they had to record themselves signs that I write it, and sometimes they have to do both. They have to record it and then write the same sign. So so they did the both, so I can verify if they were doing things correctly. And all that works were corrected in the classroom. So in one hand, that could be a good option because it will be possible to save some class time, and also because all the students could learn with the colleagues' mistakes and clarify some doubts. However, on the other hand, what happened was that a lot of students didn't do the homework. So in the class, they don't take all the advantage that they should. And sometimes when it wasn't possible to do the correction in the classroom, I did it at home, and then I delivered the works to the students. So they always had feedback about their performance, their writing performance. So I think from what I saw, I think it was a good strategy. So they had the theory in the class and some practice also, but the idea of their practice at home, it was really good too. Besides that, there was no doubts. Like I said, that practice and correction was a very efficient strategy for learning sign writing. So another good strategy that I used was giving to students the chance to produce written signs in the class, because with that they were able to understand the difference between the two perspectives. I mean, the perspective of the person who is producing the signs and the perspective of the person who is seeing the signs. Because at the beginning it was very difficult to them to understand that they have to write according to their perspective. They have to write what they see, and most of the times they write what they see on the other person's hand and not on their hand. So it was good for them. The materials that I used were also fundamental to students' study. In every class, I always use the PowerPoint, so they can have a visual support. Well, in Portugal, we don't have much books or much bibliography about sign writing, so I had to use some materials from another countries, like United States and Brazil, which are countries with where sign writing is they have lots of materials. So, in fact, the only Portuguese material that I used was my master thesis. So it's the only one. But I use materials from United States and Brazil, but I don't think that was a big problem, because once the symbols are universal, are the same at all the countries, it was good to the students to realize how they can write signs and learn another signs also from another sign language. And of course, all of this process of teaching had difficulties, and besides the fact that it was the first time for me to teach this subject, sometimes I was a little insecure, and I think that happened because most of the things that I know about sign writing was self-learning. It was made by myself, by reading, practicing, or reading documents and investigation things. And also I did an online course with Metson Barreto from Brazil, which was crucial to improve my writing skills.
Very nice.
So, as I told, this presentation shows two views, two perspectives. So, I already talked about the first one, and now I will talk about the second one, the student's perspective. Before that, I think it's important to mention that these students began to have contact with sign language just a few months before. At the moment, so they weren't fluent in the language. So this was something very important to take in account, because sometimes they don't even know the signs, which increases difficulties when writing it. So, well, but in opposite, having this subject was an asset to enlarge their vocabulary knowledge. Just to mention, the class had 20 students. There are 2 men and 18 women, and they have the ages were between 18 and 28. So in order to understand students' point of view and their opinions about the subject, I made an individual and anonymous inquiry. So what I intend with this is that students explains how they felt about learning this new subject, about learning sign writing for the first time. So first of all, I questioned the students if it was useful for them to learn sign writing and why. Here it is. Um, and it was amazing to realize and to verify that wasn't a negative answer to this question. So all the students say yes, and they have shown some different reasons to their answers. Some of the reasons were because it was helpful to the sign language learning, because they have the possibility of read and write sign language. Also, because some of them consider that the sign language, with the sign writing system, the sign language is at the same level of other language, like Portuguese, for instance. And also the possibility of knowing and learning another sign language through sign writing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a way of helping sign language production, because they can see the signs writing, and then they can produce what is right. Another reasons were the recognition of the language, because if the language have a rating system, so it means that it is a true language. Also, it is another tool besides video, because the support that they had to study sign language most of the time are just videos. So with sign writing, they have another tool, and also to prove that I already told that sign language is a real language and not just a way of miming, as lots of people still think it is. And it is also an asset to deaf people have their own writing system. Here in the next slide, I have I'm talking about the first question, and I have some quotations, some answers about the students that I thought they were important to show. So some said that, in my opinion, it's an asset to sign language learning, also to sign language reading and writing. It's very useful because sign language isn't just miming like a lot of people think, and it's important to show the sign language writing system. So it was useful, yes, some said. It was a way of recognizing the language, and yes, because other language have writing system, and sign language should have it too. So despite all the advantages mentioned before, as I told, the subject had few hours. And because of that, I asked the students if they thought that there were enough hours for a good learning of sign writing. Well, they were all in agreement, and the answer was no. They referred that they will need more hours to get more knowledge and a good consolidation of the system. Some students also mentioned that it was an important subject with few hours of learning, and added that it was a new language with a very complex writing system, which have a lots of specificities and lots of things to learn. So the hours were not enough to clarify all the doubts that they had. And here I had some answers. So the students said things like, this subject need more hours so we can have more practice. We should have more hours because it was a lot of information and it wasn't easy. It was much complex for just 2 hours per week. That's our class. It's just 2 hours per week. We should have more hours because it's a new language. This is a very important subject, and we need more hours to have a good and solid learning. So, same ideas. So, and also that idea agrees with my initial thoughts, and it's clear for both, for me as a teacher and for students, that 20 hours are not enough to provide to who is learning sign writing for the first time the tools to be able to write sign writing fluently. So the next question was about the advantages of learning sign writing at Portuguese as Portuguese Sign Language students, there was, and here there was a general idea, which was that sign writing was an excellent tool to help them while they are studying Portuguese Sign Language, because it allows them, the students, to write signs learned recently, and also because they can take simple and quick notes about signs, as well as the fact of can register the signs and later remember it. And besides that, some students told that with sign writing they can understand better the chimeras and its function, so they can know where is the localization, the shape of the hand, the orientation of the hand, the movement. So it is easier to them to understand that with the sign writing. Also, in this question, some students told me to answer that they can make a correct production of the signs, and can also realize not only how to execute the signs, but also the sentence structure, because once we write sentence, they are able to see how it is the structure. Some students also said that with sign writing they were able to compare the two languages, in this case Portuguese language and Portuguese Sign Language, and realize the main difference between the two languages. And other students, because here the students really like international signs, so some students told that once the symbols used are the same, they will be able to get to know international signs by sign writing, using sign writing. This class had both teachers, future teachers, Portuguese Sign Language teachers, and future interpreters, and some future teachers talked about the possibility of, in the future, teach sign writing to deaf and also to hearing students. And also a couple of students added the fact of fulfillment. And I think it's a very interesting idea that students felt that with sign writing they have some personal and also some professional gains.
Wow. Great.
Here are some answers that I choose to show you. So some said, I think that the writing is something very important for every language, and sign writing allows sign language to have its writing. It's like if I speak Portuguese and I don't know how to write it. It's very important to know how to write the sign that we produce, and we can do it with sign writing. I can have a writing conversation with someone who also knows sign writing. It's a very interesting answer that students are already thinking, having writing conversation through sign writing. So next I ask the students to tell the main difficulties that they felt while they are learning sign writing. So in general, students' opinion was that sign writing is a very complex system, and the first approach wasn't easy, meaning it was hard to them to know how to start writing, what should they write first, where to put the arrows, and which one to choose. Were they all context symbols needed, or they can simply...
Oh, I can't hear her. Rafa, we've lost your sound. Can you hear, Rafa?
So after realizing how they should start and how it works, the writing, all the students affirm that they have some difficulties, for example, on understanding the movements, like distinguish between the plans, and some movements like the forearm movements, the hand movements, and also the circular movements were a little confused to them. So for other students, the difficulties were on the shapes of the hands. They told that there were a lot of hand shapes, and some were hard to understand. There was one student who told that the biggest difficulty was put it all together. So they have the movements, the shapes of the hands, the hand orientation, the localization of the signs, and the student understood it separated, but once he had to put it all together, it was a little difficult to him.
Okay.
And another one added that his biggest difficulty was writing in columns, probably because they are used to write in lines, so it's a little different. And here are some answers to these questions. So there are a lot of hand shapes, and at the beginning was a little scary. While we were progressing in the subject, it became really hard to arrange the movements with the hand shape and the orientation. My biggest difficulty was the first approach to writing because it was a new information and it seems very hard. So, next question was about real application of sign writing in the future from them, who are now studying Portuguese Sign Language. And here the answers were a little varied, which is good because proves that sign writing can be values in so many fields. So therefore, the main thoughts here were the possibility of learning a new sign language to sign writing, the possibility of remember signs which are written, because you know if you are a long time without producing a sign or without seeing some sign, it can happen, you can forget it. So if the sign is written, you can remember it. And also the possibility of having a good knowledge about language and its grammar, because sign writing shows all of that. Also the grammar, because you can write sentence. And the possibility of having a writing communication with someone who also knows the system sign writing. And the possibility of take quick notes in quick write of new signs. Some of the students, as I said, will become Portuguese Sign Language teachers. So they mentioned the possibility of, in the future, teaching sign writing. So besides, there were students who said, I think this was a really relevant invention, like the possibility for deaf students to write and to read on their own native language, as well as the important fact that sign writing, it might be a reality soon in deaf education, because right now lots of people are learning sign writing. So probably in the future this could happen at schools and deaf schools. And here are some answers that I thought they were important to show. So unfortunately, sign writing isn't taught to deaf students, but the more people learn it, more likely sign writing might be a reality in deaf education. As many written systems, sign writing helps the language consolidation and also its grammars. As a future teacher, it's crucial to learn sign writing so I can teach it to my students. It allows me to write the signs so I can remember them later. And it's very interesting because the students start to learn sign language recently, also sign writing, and they already think of this way. It's really interesting that they value the sign writing system, because here in Portugal some deaf people are a little, I don't know how to say, not afraid or not scared, but they don't accept very well the sign language writing, because they say we have video, so we don't need a system, a writing system. And I think it's important that students, future teachers, think like this, because they will be future teachers, so they can pass the message and they can teach this subject. So lastly, I asked the students to add some observation or some comments that they thought that were important to be said. So here also the answers were varied. So some students were surprised to know about sign writing, meaning they had no idea that sign language can be written. And other students referred that it was a very interesting and useful subject, but also very difficult and very complex. And because of that, they will need more hours of learning or to have the subject in the following school years, because here on sign language degree we have sign writing at the first year, and it's only that year, and on the following second and third they don't have sign writing, so they only learn sign writing This 20 hours, it's the only contact that they have with sign writing. And so these ideas, I think, were also proved that with the answers to the question, with this, we can be, the students enjoy, we can, I think with this question, with this answer, sorry, we can see that students enjoy the subject, but they felt that they had what they had learned was not enough to be fluently. So at the end, they all agreed that teachers and interpreters should know this writing system. And here we have some answers. So this system should be taught to deaf children as soon as possible, just like hearing children learn to write the system of their spoken language. I really enjoyed the subject, and I think it's very important to students who are learning sign language. We should have more hours of this subject. It was very unexpected for me because I have no idea that it existed. So, in conclusion, and as stated before, and despite of being hard in the beginning, all the students thought that sign writing was a fundamental tool for those who are learning sign language, and it's a big help to the study and to science productions. Besides, all can imagine a practice application of the system now while they are studying and in the future. Can imagine application, yeah, now in the future. So, and I also think that way because if at the beginning it was hard to teach, and it wasn't, I believe that practice makes it better. So it's important to continue the process and try to improve the skills. And this idea of continuing the process, improve the skills, it's also to the teacher as well to the students, because in order to become fluent in writing sign writing, it's important to practice. And lastly, based on the student's answer, I can conclude that it is crucial that future teachers and also interpreters have the opportunity to learn how to write Portuguese Sign Language. So thus, my final thought is that this experience was very important because sign writing can only be a reality in deaf education here in Portugal once there are teachers with knowledge and skills to teach this subject at schools. And that's it. Thank you.
Wow, that's wonderful. Well, don't go away. Bring back yourself.
Yes.
Unshare your screen.
Okay.
There you are. There you are. Wow. I'm really stunned. That was a beautiful presentation. And you explained it really, really well. And the combination of your slides with your discussion made it an extremely important presentation. And I look forward to putting interpreters to the task of getting a transcript of what you said, because I think, well, you know, you're an interpreter yourself, but what you said is so a backup for the slides. It's so important what you explained. Thank you very much for doing this project. And
thank you.
You are an interpreter yourself, isn't that true?
Yes. Yes, right. It's true.
Yes.
And I'm also a teacher.
And you're also a teacher. That's obvious.
Yes, right now. Yeah.
And what university? Where did you teach this course?
I teach. Well, it's not. It's higher education. It's not called university. Well, it's the same thing. It just don't have the same name. So it's higher education of Coimbra.
Of Coimbra. Okay.
Coimbra. Yeah, it's a city near between Lisbon, the capital, and Oporto. So it's in the center of the country.
Yes, and your previous presentation last year, presentation 22. You had developed beautiful materials,
yes.
And they were for deaf children, is that right?
Yes.
Right.
And hearing also, because here we have deaf children in hearing schools. They are like, we have the inclusion system. So deaf children can have access to that books, but also hearing children's. Because the story was recorded in sign language and also have voice. So it is accessible to all, deaf and
that's
hearing.
wonderful. So that was your master's degree, I believe, isn't that right?
No, that was a work that we have done last year in school. Because one of the teacher writes the history, and then our deaf teacher sign it, and one of the interpreter voice the voice the. But my master thesis was about adapting the sign writing system to Portuguese Sign Language. So I made a proposal of some signs, some written signs, to prove that sign writing can be adapted to Portuguese Sign Language. So with the hope that we can use it here in Portugal. And I also made a proposal of a course. So if once they become a reality, teachers can apply to that, have that course in order to teach sign writing. Because here we have Portuguese Sign Language program that Portuguese Sign Language teachers should use. Also have sign writing in the program, but the problem is it's that most of the teachers don't learn sign writing, so they weren't able to teach. So it's a big problem. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a problem if they're given the subject but nobody can teach it except for yourself. It sounds like yes.
Yes.
Well,
it's included in Portuguese Sign Language subject, so it's like just a few hours, and only at when the students have more or less 15, 16 years old, so it's too late. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? So in your case now, you're training interpreters and teachers who are going to go forward and teach Portuguese Sign Language, is that correct?
Yes. Yes,
and
correct.
So some of them don't even know sign language, if I understood you correctly. No. That's a lot to learn. Yeah.
Yes, because here we don't have the obligation. You can apply to a degree without knowing sign language. It's not the obligation. So because we don't have sign language subject for hearing, it's not a choice. You know, if you are in a school, you can choose between English, French, Spanish, and sign language is not an option. So we can't obligate the students to know sign language if they don't have. Yeah.
So they're opting to become a teacher. They're choosing to become a teacher of deaf students or of interpreters. Or is it both?
Well, they choose to become a teacher. So then when they finish, it depends on the place where they will work. Most of them will work on deaf schools, so teach deaf students. But like I said, some schools, there are few schools, but some schools have sign language to the hearing students, which have classes with deaf students. Yeah, but there are few schools that do that.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking, yes, go ahead. I was just going to ask these questions because in our country, in the United States, and I'm sure in other countries too, there are oftentimes quite a difference between deaf education and classes that teach sign language to hearing people. It's a very different world, really. Deaf education, oftentimes they don't even teach deaf people sign language. Did you know that in some schools? They just don't believe in it. Oh yeah, so deaf people are just using sign language on the playground, but they in school are given lip reading.
Are that specific schools to deaf students? Because here parents can choose if they want her deaf children, if they go to deaf schools or hearing schools, and if they are implanted, you know, the cochlear implant, parents can choose, and they are not obligated to go to deaf schools. And if they go to hearing schools, they don't have sign language too. They don't have interpreters, and they are mixed with hearing.
This is such an interesting topic because on our first presentation day, this symposium, on presentation 42, Dr. Mohammed Abu Sherif from Saudi Arabia and Jordan brought up this very topic. In fact, he asked me to do some homework and find out how many people use cochlear implants in the United States. So after we were all done, I had to look that up, and there was a good number, but I'll never know the real number. The point here is this, that you have cochlear implants also in Portugal, obviously, and some people use it and some people don't. But it sounds like you have deaf schools that are like a residential deaf school where people are all using sign language with deaf children, and then there are those who are using the hearing schools as a mainstream, as we call it here. That makes sense, and all of that is very confusing, isn't it? Because there are so many different ways of thinking. And what about the teachers at the deaf schools? Do they use sign language with their students?
Yes.
Good.
If we are talking about this specific schools where they have the special needs, you know, special education, they have sign language, they have classes only with deaf students and some other subjects mixed with hearing. And in that schools we have more or less 24, 23, I don't know exactly the number, all over the country. So they're not too much, but they're okay. It's like one for, I don't know, some mainly city district. And the deaf students are there, and they have deaf teacher and also hearing teacher, because here in Portugal, hearing can also teach sign language. And yes, they have hours of sign language. They have Portuguese language has second language, and
it's good.
Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's good. Yeah.
Yes. So what do you see as the future now of sign writing in Portugal? How do you feel that it's going to move forward?
Well, I think it will be a little difficult, because most of the Portuguese sign language teachers are not young people. They teach for a long time, and most of them take the degree here in Coimbra because it was the first one. So they know something about sign writing, but like I said, they were a little, let me use the video, not the writing, because they learn sign writing, most of them like with 20, 25 years or maybe more. So, and that proves that if they had learned it younger, it will be easier to them. So they learn while they are, I don't know, they have 20 years or more. So it's difficult to learn it, and only with 20 hours of contact. So it's very difficult. They have 20 hours of learning, and then they need to teach it.
I think what you're saying. I think what you're saying is they already knew sign language, perhaps, for 20 years. Yes. Right. So they already knew sign language. They had never had a written form before because they didn't know about sign writing, or it might not have even been ready yet. You know how that is. It's a new system too. And so now they're learning about it, and it's very hard to change. I mean, if you're told for 20 years that the language you know does not have a written form, and then somebody comes along like yourself, you're a beautiful teacher, and you say, here it is, everybody, it must be kind of a shock, right? That's what, that's their reaction to it. But it sounds like you're doing a beautiful job.
Yes, I'm trying to, with new teachers. And I also have deaf students, because we have mixed it. The degree have hearing and deaf students, so I worked with an interpreter, which was funny because I am an interpreter, and it was the first time that I was working with an interpreter. And it was really interesting because the deaf students that I had, they are like 18, 19 years old, and they were like, oh, this is so visual, it's so clear to me because I see my hand, so I will write it like this, and I make this movement, I will write this movement. Because sign writing is very visual. So, and it was funny because they noticed that.
Isn't that nice? That's really great. You know, there's a visual quality to sign writing on purpose.
Well,
if you know what I mean. We made the real reading system the most important part in our world. We wanted very much to have everybody be able to read a document quickly if they knew sign language already. If they knew what the signs were, they could see the palm facing. It's very visual. They have facial expressions. It looks like the signs. And actually, if one knows sign language already, and you look at sign writing for the first time, all you need is a few minutes introduction of, oh, this is a handshake and all. And then presto, people are reading. And therefore, the reading part of it is actually very fast for those who know sign language. The reason that your students were saying they needed more time is mainly just to learn how to write it. Isn't that right? It's the writing of it that took the time, because you have to think. And you have to know sign language enough to be able to know what you want to write. That's the first thing. And you were mentioning how it's not mime, it's actually writing and structure. You're doing an amazing job. Now, I wanted to ask you about the materials before we run out of time, because I know that you did beautiful materials last year talking about the deaf students and the beautiful for children, and you know, the project last year was different, of course. Now you're teaching adults, and yes, go ahead, tell me.
Yeah, it was different. Yeah, last year it was about a book that we have a story, and then I write it with sign writing. So the book was not published yet with sign writing, but we are trying to do it because I think it's a good way to show sign writing, because this book will be sell all over the country. So probably many people that don't even know about sign writing will pick the book and read the sheet and look and see what's this, and maybe they will be curious and want to know more about the system. That's what I hope is going to happen. So let's
very good.
Probably this year or next year we can publish the book.
Oh, good. That's great. Now, is there anything we can do? Would you like us to do some translations of some of our books that we have into Portuguese? Of course, we don't know Portuguese Sign Language, but tell me about other books. What is the book that you have right now that you're going to be published?
Well, the one that I presented last year was it's called Princess, the Princess of the Sea, the Earth and the Sky. And now we are probably having a new project. It's not very talked yet, but because this one we couldn't do it because we don't have the program to do sign writing, and then the deadlines were very close, and we don't have time to do sign writing. So, but this year, probably starting on September, we are trying to do a new book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I hope we can publish that with sign writing.
Okay, this is what I'm trying to get at. I'm sorry if I'm confusing you. What I'm asking is, first of all, are you using any kind of software?
No, I did the other one by hand, so I write it all.
You're amazing. So, does that mean that all your students are writing everything by hand, which is fine, but I'm just curious.
Yes.
Well, Rafa, have you ever considered maybe suggesting to your students who have computers, like Steve Slavinsky's smiling right now because he obviously has developed software. There's Sign Puddle Online, but guess what? We also, if I get this to even function here, just one moment, we also have something for the iPad, you know, for tablets, and I don't know whether you can see, but see, that's just a tablet, and it has the sign writing on it, and you can actually write signs right on your tablet. Now, I know that all of that is a computer program that you may not want to teach because maybe you're new to it yourself, but over time, you would be surprised if you say to some of your students, is there anybody here who knows computers well? Probably a few of them would raise their hands, because usually there are, out of a group of people. And let's imagine you just touch two people by saying, did you know you can go online, and this is for free, and you just go up to Sign Puddle for Portugal, and as you know, that's at signbank.org/signpuddle. You click on the flag for Portugal, and yes, it's brand new for you, but you just go in, you register, and hey, you can start writing some signs, and then you can put it on your tablet. Over time, those two people just might become so skilled that they would give you the diagrams really cool, probably in very good quality looking symbols that, of course, by hand is fine, but when you start publishing books, it's nice. Now, I've done my little...
Yeah, it's not. That's a good idea, yeah.
And please let us help you with that. I realize that you're probably feeling kind of all alone unless you've got some other people to work with. Do you have other people to help you? Okay.
Not really, no.
Okay, well, I'm offering our help. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Thank you.
And you are welcome. For example, Adam created a nice book on American hand shapes, American Sign Language hand symbols. I know that may not be the way you're going to be teaching, but if you wanted to use any of our diagrams from our books, you're most welcome. We can collaborate. It's completely free and open. We believe in that. That's why we know each other. When you think about it, how did you learn about sign writing? How did you learn about sign writing, Rafa?
When I was studying, I heard some, I don't know, in some classes, I think in linguistic classes, a teacher
Uh-huh.
talked about sign language writing system, and I was curious, and I searched on the internet, and then I found
You
you.
used a computer. There we go.
Yes.
And the
Then I
internet.
really enjoy it, and I think it's really important. That's why I went to the master and decided to choose this scheme.
Yes, and by the way, I think you should do your own textbooks. But what I was really offering originally here is that we could take one of our books that is actually using American Sign Language as an example, and
Mm-hmm.
just simply translate it into Portuguese without
Oh,
changing any of the diagrams. If nothing
okay.
more, if you had that much, from there you could change all the diagrams and be able to put in the real sign writing for the Portuguese Sign Language as
That
examples.
will be great. Yeah.
That would be
Yeah.
one way to go. It's not the only way to go because you should do your own
Yeah,
books
but it's
too.
one way. Yeah.
That's
Sure.
right. And it's something that we could probably do faster than usual. So I
Okay.
would be able to give you the original document, for example, for the Sign Writing Basics Instruction Manual, which is a little manual that's like 45 pages and has a bunch of
Okay.
diagrams. And we wouldn't even
Okay.
try to change the diagrams at first. We would just do the Portuguese part. And then you'd have
Okay.
everything for, I'll just give you everything, and then you just do that. And then from there,
Okay.
you just start changing it.
Yeah.
So we'll work
Great.
together if you want to. But I
Yeah.
want you to
Sure. Sure.
I want you to know this is just phenomenal what you've done. And the fact that you've gotten students to respond is so fabulous. You know why you're hearing a lot of noises? Is because people are responding to your presentation on email. So I think what I
Good.
should, yeah, I know, kind of amazing, huh? Let me see
Here
what I
on
can
the
do.
chat, on the left, right, or no?
We used to have the questions and answers over there, or the
Yeah.
questions.
Right.
And I do regret that maybe this year we didn't do it, but we didn't because we did it through email instead. Because
Okay.
last year, when we had it on the side, it became very frustrating. We couldn't see the answers and the
Yeah.
questions, and it
And sometimes
oftentimes
I'm
did.
a little confused. Yeah.
And I really don't mean to keep you from seeing these questions. That's unfair. So later on, when we're all done with the presentation, I will definitely share this with you. And you can even look up on the sign writing list to see some of the questions. But for right
Okay.
now, I just want you to know we have a really good comment by Adrian Clark and by Charles Butler. Yes, Adam, go ahead.
You had a comment from Stefan who is saying that you could also contact the Dallas team to do some work too,
Yes.
to get your book to come out for getting words in there for your
Right.
getting the sign writing in your book.
Okay. Okay.
It's
Well,
also
see
an
now.
learning tool.
What'd you say, Steve?
DELEGS is also an excellent learning tool for in the classroom
Yeah.
itself.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed
Yeah,
Stefan.
I talked with Stefan this morning, and he told me about Delhi.
So you know all about it.
Yeah.
Sometimes DELEGS is expanding, but originally it was completely dependent upon SignPuddle Online. So you would first have to enter your signs in the SignPuddle Online Portuguese Sign Language dictionary that we have provided for people free online. And you click on a Portuguese flag, go in there and start adding. And then you would then go to DELEGS and access the Portuguese Sign Language SignPuddle, and you would use those signs within sentences. In DELEGS, they would give you the sentences from left to right, but that's
Okay.
why you could put spoken language underneath and teach deaf children a combination of signs and spoken language. That's what Stefan's doing with his classroom. So in deaf education, teaching deaf children language of both spoken and sign, the DELEGS program is superb. Meanwhile, in SignPuddle by itself, you can do literature where you're going down the page in columns. And
Okay.
so there are different ways of working. No matter what, either way, you can get good quality signs that could be added in to your diagrams for your new textbooks. You know, you would write a sign, even on this beautiful iPad. I can actually, with SignMaker 2015, which is a connected to Symposium online, I can actually create SVG, beautiful graphics, in other words, where I take one sign and I can enlarge it, and it goes huge. And then you can get really good copies into your diagrams for your book. So,
Great.
would you like to finish, Rafa, and tell us anything more that you have planned?
No, I think it's already. I have already told everything, so I'm very happy to be here again with you. Very, very good. So
we are also
let's continue to work. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really, really glad. Now, are you going to continue to teach signwriting at
next year?
Next year? Wow.
Yeah,
that's
February
good.
again. Yeah.
So
I'm very happy.
Yes, so you keep us informed, please, of how the students do.
And I will use your materials to help me.
Also use your own materials, of course. I don't mean to stop you from developing your own, because obviously you have a different sign language than American Sign Language, but when it comes to teaching basics of sign writing symbols themselves, we have a few basic books that might be of use. So
that's right.
Yeah, and Stefan, I think, has even said something else about how fantastic the software can be as a support, both Symposium and Telex. So you can see we have a lot of enthusiastic software users. There are some students who have only learned sign writing through software. And to finish, I wanted to tell you that Adam Frost actually went to Portugal once. It was in 2009. And you want to tell us a little bit about that? Yeah, Adam, did you meet Rafa at that time?
I don't think I did.
No. It was like a congress, and then you gave some workshop, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I was at the conference, but not at the workshop at that time. I don't know. I don't remember why, but I couldn't tell. But I remember that you were here in Lisbon, right?
It was in Lisbon, and the reason that I bring this up is that when Adam was in Lisbon, he actually stayed, I believe, with a deaf family, and the deaf people who met Adam at the time started writing some signs in Portuguese Sign Language. From the,
yeah, I know him.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I realized that that's a totally different world and not necessarily connected to your teaching. But on the other hand, he does know sign writing and might be because he's already written some signs in the Portuguese sign puddle. Yeah. So
and we have another. Sorry to interrupt you. We have another deaf teacher who is studying sign writing, and he will present his thesis, not the master, the other one, doctor. I don't know how
his doctorate is on sign writing?
PhD, yeah. His PhD thesis next week, next Thursday, about sign writing. He worked with Marianne,
Oh my goodness, I didn't know this.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and his team is about how deaf children learn sign writing and how the learning of sign writing can improve their skills to the Portuguese Portuguese writing. Yeah, I will go to Porto next week to see his PhD thesis. Yeah.
Well, this is just amazing. I hope you'll tell him how glad we are to hear of this, and that we're here also to support him as well. And as you know, Mariana Stumpf and I have an old, wonderful history back. She was the first person to learn sign writing in Brazil.
Yeah, she is amazing. Yeah, she was here in Coimbra last year, and she made a presentation about sign writing, about her experience in teaching sign writing, and it was great. It was amazing.
We are so blessed that Portugal and Brazil work together. I mean, when you think about it, that you do work together in the sign language world. I've noticed that, and I think that's very impressive. I'm glad to see it. Listen, please tell everybody next week how glad we are to hear about it. We'd like to learn more about the new dissertation on sign writing, because I did not know about it. No, thanks for telling me. But meanwhile, your work is progressing sign writing forward in the education system, and this is extremely important. Rafa, you are a pioneer. You really are. So your students are welcome to join SignPuddle and to join our sign writing list.
Yeah, I've shown the site, but, you know.
Of course, it takes time, doesn't it? It's all going to work out. Okay, well, I want to thank you very much for coming, and I treasure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I love talking to you. It's just a pleasure. It really is.
Thank you.
And I hope that everybody will view this presentation. I am planning definitely to have this interpreted in other languages and transcribed into both Portuguese and English because we need it so badly. So thank you, and I want you to know that in a half hour we are having a presentation from Brazil, which is interesting.
Yeah.
It seems that Brazil and Portugal, you have a lot of presentations, which is really good. And presentation 48 will be from Rony Fagundes de Brito, who is a software developer talking about software for sign writing. It seems to be just blossoming, taking off. And Rony and his team of 3 other people from Brazil are working on a way to actually translate for people, like a program that would help them translate their dissertations, I believe, into written sign language. So, well, we'll hear more about it when he tells us about it. So, okay, well, thank you very much, and we're going to take a half-hour break, of course.
Nice to see you.
Yes.
So bye-bye.
Bye-bye, darling. And we'll see everybody in a half hour. Come back, everybody, and we'll see you at the half hour. And thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.